And welcome back to another episode of Stories from the Shed. My name is Adam, and again with me this week, a man whose life is like a book, poorly written, and he dies at the end. Jake, how you doing?
Didn't your teacher ever tell you to not begin a sentence with "and"?
Wow. Anything goes in the shed.
Yeah, that's fair. Especially when you're 26 beers deep.
That's right. Hey, 27.
Hey, 27. Oh, I'm sorry.
So, how you
My
been,
bad.
man? Since
Good.
yesterday.
Yeah, right? We recorded a random episode yesterday. Kind of something different.
Yeah, we had fun.
Anyway, I had half the day off today, so I got some cleaning done in the basement, got rid of some junk that I didn't need, and I'm ready to finally record the episode we've been talking about for like 2 or 3 weeks now.
Cool.
So, this will
I'm
be
ready.
fun.
So, what are we doing? What's up?
What are we doing? We're recording right now.
Of course.
Of course.
Well, I guess we could start off. We got a couple of guests with us. We got all 4 mics set up today.
Yep, first time in a while.
First time in a while, yeah. We've got Ashton back. How's it going, man?
I'm doing all right. What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for coming back. So what brings you back to the shed?
Oh, you know,
The
beers.
The
beers.
The beers in the cold weather.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
that's it.
Not wanting to sit inside, inside the house, but sit in a smaller house
Yeah, basically.
with beers. So,
And we have on our 4th guest today. Now, this is funny. Her name's Jessica, but we always call her by her last name.
Do you?
Yes.
yeah, actually we do.
You're not the first person to do that.
So I was like, I was like, how are we going to do this? It just hit me before we started.
You can call me Jurgen. That's fine. A lot of people do.
Okay, so we'll go with Jurgen. So we got Jurgen with us today.
Hey.
And hey, how you
I'm
doing?
good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you here today?
So I work with Ashton and you at the bank, and I'm here to kind of talk about a case two cases that went on at my previous place of employment. Ashton worked with me there too.
I did.
There were 2 homicides there, so we're going to kind of cover that tonight.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Other than that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, work at the bank with you. Live local, Lewiston, Auburn.
Seem to be
Yeah.
hardcore into the true crime. You do a lot of reading.
Yeah, I'm
into
very
that.
into the true crime. Listen to a lot of the podcasts. Kind of been a fan of that before it was really a thing back when I was a teen.
Yeah, because it almost seems like it's only caught on within the last.
Last 5 or 10 years
5 or
when
10 years.
podcasts
Yeah,
became a thing. Yeah.
Yep, that's kind of when I started listening. Is about 4 or 5 years ago. Just a general different.
Now
things.
it's everywhere and on everything.
Yeah, back then you had to find
Search
weird
for it, yeah.
websites
You had
online.
to go and look for it.
Yeah.
And you had to actually put it on your iPod. It didn't just show up on your phone. Back in those days. At
Yeah.
least I did anyway.
Yeah, no, I remember that. And to be honest, I kind of just got into podcasting within the past few years, so kind of hit it at its prime. But what do we drink for beer? Jurgen, you brought the beer today, so why don't you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, I picked up. It's a blonde ale called Dancing in the Ruins. It is by a brewery called Burial Beer Company and Hoof-Hearted Brewing out of Asheville, North Carolina. And it's got Godzilla on it. It's kind of good.
I thought it looked a little bit like Reptar from.
Yeah. I could second that.
He
From
does kind of
Rugrats.
look like Reptar.
Now, we don't have a rating on this yet. We're going to have to crack them open here and maybe give you a rating by the middle of the show or so, huh? We just kind of got going here.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So we'll get back to you on the beers, but they do look good, if
They
that
do
makes
look
any
really good.
sense. What's the first story you want to go over?
All right, so the first case that I'd want to kind of cover chronologically was the case of Richard Dwyer. This happened. Should I just get right into it?
Sure.
Okay. So this happened in October of 2007. And to give a little bit of background, Ashton and I worked at a call center in Lewiston. It's no longer there. It was called ACS. It was LiveBridge before that, then became Xerox. It's totally no more. But 2007, there was we'll call it a missing persons case to begin with.
Dun,
So,
dun, dun.
yes.
At least initially.
Initially, yeah.
Yep. So in October 2007, the victim, her name was Donna Parody. She was 38 years old. She lived with her daughter in Lewiston, and she was about 8 months pregnant at the time.
Oh, wow. Did she have other kids?
Yeah, she had another daughter and a son, I believe. But she had recently been divorced. She met a man on the internet from Syria, flew out there, they got married, and she came back to the States pregnant. So I do believe at the time this was going on, he was like in the final stages of getting his like immigration to come here. So it's kind of sad. I don't want to get too far into that till we get to the end, but it's kind of sad because this kind of screwed that up for him as well.
And that's a task.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to kind of get right into it of the day of the crime, on October 23rd, the victim, Donna Parody, received a note from Richard Dwyer. And then she told another coworker I'll back it up here. He was trying to help her get a car. On October 23rd, the victim received a note from Richard Dwyer about the car that he was going to help her get. She told another coworker that was working with her that day, I don't know her name, that the car that Dwyer had found for her was out in the parking lot and that she was going to like pay for it and drive it home that day.
Seems like a good deal. Finds
Yeah.
her a car and brings it to her.
Yeah, what
Yep.
kind of a car
What
was
a
it?
nice guy.
That part I don't know.
Not sure.
Not sure about that.
But she
Really-
had the money to pay for it in full.
She had the money to pay for it. So pretty much what ended up happening from there is both Richard Dwyer and her left work. Donna Parody walked down to the Northeast Bank. It's now some other bank. I think we said it was like a Camden National now.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But it's the one that's kind of, if you're familiar with the area, on like Lisbon Street, kind of down where the McDonald's is.
Sure.
So she walked down there.
That's a long walk.
It is a pretty long walk for someone who is 8 months pregnant.
Yeah, for sure.
So she walked down there to get a
Doctor's
money
orders,
order.
maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah. She got, it was about, let's see here, it was 2:42 p.m.
Just in the middle of the afternoon.
Right, middle of the
Yep.
afternoon, so like after like lunches. She went into the bank and got a $400 money order made out to her. But she then went back into the bank and cashed it.
That's
And-
kind of odd.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
the reasoning for that, but she got $400 bills.
What do you think she would have done that, Ashton? Had a money order for $400 made out in her name.
It seems like an easy way to launder it if you have to for whatever
Yeah,
reason.
but you're buying a $400 car.
Right, like she went and got the
Yeah.
money order and then like
Something
cashed it
doesn't seem
herself.
right.
So it was really strange. Like I don't know the reasoning for that.
That is kind of weird.
Yeah.
And I wonder what kind of a car he promised her at $400.
For
Right.
$400?
Well, at least it better start at least.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that might have been just a down payment.
Yep. Sounds like a deal.
Yeah.
So, shortly after 3:30 p.m., another coworker saw Donna on foot on Lisbon Street getting ready to cross the street. It would have been around where Burger King is on Lisbon Street, down towards where the call center was.
And the call
Right.
center was in a mall.
Yes, the
Yep.
call center was in the Lewiston Mall. So kind
what they
of
call them all.
right.
Yeah.
So kind of where the new trampoline park is,
Yep.
or like the old Ames building. If you're like from here and have been here a long time,
I
don't
remember
even
that
remember
store.
that.
That was like a classier Martin's, basically.
it was
And for
really
people that
was.
are not
What
from
was it
here,
called? Ames?
Ames. It
Ames,
was like a
yep.
department store, but it was, I don't know.
Sold everything?
Yeah, it was kind of like Kmart, basically, but smaller.
Yeah.
No wonder it went out of
so
business.
This
Right?
mall, it was a very small mall. You had anchor stores. You had Sears on one end. You had an Ames on the other. And then you had the hallway. It's a very small
Right.
mall. They took one of the larger ends as, times had changed, and being Ames, which is, like we stated, a larger department store, kind of cleared that out and turned that area into ACS and other things.
Right.
This
Yep.
is just a small mall that is slowly becoming office space like malls all over the country and probably all over the world now.
Right. Where it is now is like that trampoline park. But yeah, that's about where it was. And she was crossing the street by the Burger King, by the site. So if we back it up to what Richard Dwyer's doing at this point. So Dwyer left work early for a doctor-related reason, departing at 2:42 p.m. and was supposed to report back to work. My friend Rowan was actually the person working in workforce that took the early release from him. So that was kind of interesting.
And what did you do there, Jurgen?
I was a supervisor for another campaign. So if we're going to talk about kind of what went on there so people have a better idea, it was a BPO call center. And what that means is they have different campaigns where they handle other companies' business. So Richard Dwyer and Donna Parody worked for Capital One, and they took incoming credit card applications. At the time, I worked at a lot of different departments there, but I worked for Barclaycard. And we also did applications. So I was a supervisor there at the time. It was literally about 2 months before I became a supervisor. So it was a very interesting kind of first thing to kind of come into.
Would you say the dynamic was typically you had like a team lead over a small group of people, and that's kind of how they did this?
So yes and no. So we had per campaign 1 or 2 supervisors. They didn't have like a team lead per se that oversaw anything. There were people who were like in unofficial roles. You could say that Richard Dwyer was kind of in that team lead role.
Okay, that's kind of what I was wondering.
Right. He definitely wasn't a supervisor or anything like that, but there were many nights we worked the closing shift and our campaigns sat pretty like side by side next to each other. There were many nights where there was no supervisor there and Dwyer was watching the floor.
And Ashton, what was your opinion of Richard Dwyer at the time when you worked there?
To be honest with you, I didn't know him too well.
Oh, you didn't? It was just somebody that you passed by?
Guy I passed by.
What did you think of him?
All right, so before all of this went down, I didn't really have too much of an opinion. He seemed pretty quiet.
Like they always do.
Right.
They always do.
My only real interaction with him, like, I'd see him out on smoke breaks. He was a little weird. He didn't say anything. And that's really how, he came across to me. There were some, like, other, like, dynamics with some other people that didn't do great. He seemed to kind of prey on, if you will, women who had like lower self-esteem.
Okay.
He did a lot of favors for young women, and it was a little bit creepy, if you will. He'd give a lot of rides, like doing the nice guy thing. There was one girl I worked with. He lived out in Canton, so if you don't really kind of know the area, Canton's where like the whole, it's near like Jay.
So it's like
out that way,
30-ish minutes from town.
Right.
Yep.
So you're saying he had a little bit of a distance between home and work.
Right, and he'd then go further distance, like to Lisbon Falls, to pick people up for rides.
And to those that are not from this
Yeah.
area, this would be on the other side of Lewiston.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going completely out of his way.
So
Right.
far, he sounds like a nice guy.
So,
But you know what, though?
Yeah.
As a guy, and with a couple other guys here, we've worked in places where we see guys that act this way.
Mm-hmm.
And we joke around about that, you and I. We won't get too into it right now on this, but you just see them and you roll your eyes.
Right.
You're just like, geez, this guy, he's trying to
Oh yeah,
get
Pouring it
sweet on
thick.
everybody. Yeah, right? Jeez.
yeah, he was kind of a weird guy. He didn't really like anybody that stood up to him. So he did have a supervisor. Her name was Angela. She was a very assertive lady.
Can I ask if he was more like if he wasn't a fan of men and women standing up to him, or if it was more of women than men? Just wonder.
I couldn't really say. From what I observed and heard from other people, it was more he didn't like women standing up to him.
Okay.
And the supervisor he had was pretty assertive, and they kind of went rounds. My friend Rowan, actually, who took the early release, they kind of got into it back and forth a lot. When there was call volume was low, they would have to send Richard home, and he did not like that. So, I mean, I didn't have a ton of interaction with him, but, I mean, he just kind of came off as a little creepy.
Maybe not somebody you'd want to interact with a whole lot.
Yeah,
And that's
like
why.
someone I didn't want to see, like, on smoke breaks
Sure.
by myself in the back of the building.
But so up to this point, what we have is a young pregnant woman who is obviously desperate for a vehicle. She's willing to walk at 8 months pregnant all the way to a bank that's,
Right.
how far away, Jake?
Oh, God. Probably a good half mile.
Yeah, and back
Right.
To purchase a vehicle that she has not even seen yet.
Right.
And that she's entrusted this guy that she works with that's kind of in almost in a superior type position. And he's being himself and helping her out the way he normally would.
Right.
So nothing really seems terribly unusual to this point, right?
To this point, like, in hindsight, that's where I'm getting most of the creepy vibe. But I mean, she obviously really was desperate for a car. She was pregnant. She lived down on Pierce Street. So if you're not, again, for people not really familiar with the area, it is a little bit of a rougher area. To walk to ACS, you have to go up a giant hill,
Yeah, very steep.
which I would not want to do carrying a child.
And she's probably seen, his interaction with people in the past, probably thinking, nice guy, helping me out. I've seen him help people out, so.
Right.
So far, so good.
Right. So, the last time Donna was actually seen was around 4 p.m. Never seen again.
What was she doing?
That's when they saw her kind of crossing over by Burger King.
Sure.
Oh, okay, to come back to work.
Walking back from the bank.
Right. She
Okay.
actually had another job to go to after that at the Sun Journal, and she never showed up.
Now, the Sun Journal is a local newspaper
Mm-hmm.
in this area.
Yes.
Boy, she's a hard-working pregnant lady. Huh?
Yes.
For
Okay,
sure.
so she left originally to go get money to pay him for this car. So I'm assuming she was going back to work to go meet up with him to pay him for the car?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yep. Where they met up, I believe, if we're going to kind of get into it, in the parking lot, he had a car of the Promenade Mall, which is the mall across from the Lewiston Mall, where the Burger King is.
Sure.
Correct. Staples, the movie theater that used to be there now.
Yeah. And it is alleged that is where she was killed.
In the parking lot.
In the parking lot.
Oh, wow.
In the car.
Wow, in the middle of the day.
In the middle of the day.
Wow. Hard to imagine.
Yes.
Yeah. But you knew her fairly well, though, right?
Just in passing, like you didn't have a lot of interaction with people there for the most part because you had calls like almost back to back sometimes during the day, and she worked an earlier shift. I knew who she was, but I mean, it wasn't like someone who I was like close with.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, prior to everybody finding out, because up to this point, nobody knows that anything's happened to her.
Right. Nobody knows. She's just missing at this point.
So what's going on in the community and in the workplace? And
So at this point, nothing seems weird until the detectives come to work and speak to my friend Rowan and this gentleman by the name of Phil, who also worked in command center at the time, to talk about his whereabouts.
now we've all worked in call center type
Yes.
environments. People that are working there are seeing police coming through the door. And so right then and there, everybody is like, what
notices.
is going on here?
So it wasn't that unusual for this place. I'm going to be honest.
Oh, okay. That sounds like a great place to work.
This place was rather sketchy, and we'll definitely get into that a little bit more with, pertaining to this case. But it was not unusual for people to be getting like hauled out on warrants.
ACS
all
just
the
kind of
time.
hired everybody. Like, really everybody. You
Did
never
this place
know who
do
you would see in
background
this
checks at
place.
all?
Okay, so that is actually a big part of this.
Oh.
They did not at the time. I actually was never background checked. They ended up later doing them. So
As a cover your ass.
Well, don't you have to be
Right.
bonded for some of that shit?
Yes. So the interesting thing about this is Capital One required all employees to be bonded, and none of them were,
Really?
as part of their contractual agreement with ACS.
Wow.
None of them were. And the interesting thing that was really avoidable about this whole situation was Dwyer was actually a felon and did hard time before.
Really?
Yeah, he ended up, he was charged originally, I believe it was like armed robbery. He did about 7 years in federal for that. He was charged from escaping from prison. Had several
Wow. He must have been shocked when he got the job.
yeah.
They said, we'd like to offer you a position. And he's like, come again?
Right. Yeah, he was hired with that on his record. He had many assaults, OUIs. He was also a suspect in a rape that occurred actually on the footbridge right by our work.
ACS just didn't give a
Yeah.
shit.
Well, let's
Yeah,
talk a little bit
really.
about that because a rape obviously says a lot about somebody's character. But if you
Right.
describe this footbridge, this is out in the middle of the open crossing the Androscoggin River. Anybody can see you coming from any direction.
Yep.
So this is somebody that clearly has poor judgment and really doesn't care about anything.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
I mean,
other than
he
himself.
killed this girl in an open parking lot in the middle of the day.
Well, yeah. So, this is, what I'm getting at is this seems like typical behavior for this guy.
Yeah.
Right.
For those that knew him best, probably were not terribly surprised.
Right. I mean, it was definitely like a narcissistic thing to do.
Did they ask anybody, like any of the people who knew him growing up, like any of his behavior or anything like that?
That I'm not sure. I wasn't able to find anything like related to that.
Yeah.
He didn't really treat women great. He did have a girlfriend he lived with in Canton with his brother. He also had another one at work.
Oh, with his brother.
Right.
The work girlfriend.
There was a work girlfriend. She was this
boy.
really nice lady named Anita.
You mean she just went and
Yeah.
got him coffee?
No, she had it was an actual work girlfriend.
They went and made coffee.
Yeah.
Oh.
They made coffee.
Adam.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Last joke.
It's okay. But yeah, and I don't believe it was like some like consensual polyamorous thing. I don't think they knew about each other. I think he was just being skeezy. But yeah, so I mean, he had all this stuff against him.
Well, so far he sounds like a role model to me.
And to go back to that day, so you guys, police coming in and out, asking questions, pulling people away was just a typical thing at ACS.
Yeah, like honestly, people got hauled out on warrants and things like that all the time.
So
it
nobody's
was not weird.
Nobody's surprised to see them coming in. And then when it comes out that who they were asking about and all that, were people surprised that they were asking about Dwyer?
I don't think so. So how it all came about, like, I didn't even notice, even as a manager, police coming in and out on this. They hauled us all into a conference room one night, and the general manager basically stated to us that there was an employee over in Camp 1 that was missing, who it was, and that they thought that Richard Dwyer might have done it. The really creepy thing about it was that he came right back to work the next day.
Really?
Yeah, and continued to work like it wasn't a deal. So they kind of basically told us, what was going on. Donna had disappeared. They thought that Richard was involved with it, and just to play it cool.
You know what? I got a few questions to ask you, but
Yes.
before we do that, let's take a quick beer break.
Okay.
All right, sounds good.
Very relieved. I just glad that this is going to be coming to an end. I'm going to say
Just hours after Donna Paravity's funeral, family members learned that police had made the arrest. They say if Richard Dwyer is indeed the killer, they have no mercy.
Since Maine doesn't have the death penalty, I hope he goes to prison for life without no parole.
I'm glad they caught him, and I hope he deserves whatever he gets.
Guy down there.
This beer is really good. I know we just went on a break to have one of these, but crack it open a little late. That's okay.
It's delicious.
Seems like a common thing.
It was well worth the wait. It's like having sunshine in a can.
Yeah,
pretty
you
good.
actually said that
It
it
is.
tasted like the label.
It does. And I even licked the label, too, to confirm that. It is delicious.
It's a scratch and lick label.
It's a scratch and lick. Those are the best ones. No, this is good. Now, I know you mentioned it earlier, but what is this again? Because this is different.
Yeah, it's called Dancing in the Ruins. It's a blonde ale. It says here it has Vietnamese cinnamon and Tahitian vanilla added,
They even imported the cinnamon to make it.
right?
So you know it's good.
Oh, for sure.
And it's from Burial Beer Company and Hoof Hearted Brewing out of Asheville, North Carolina.
Well, they know what they're doing out there.
They sure
yeah,
do.
for real.
For sure. This is delicious. Let's round the horn with this one. Jake, what are you giving it?
I'm giving it a 4.
Solid 4.
You know what
Scully
else is
fingers.
really? You know what? I changed my mind. I want to give it a 4.5.
Ooh,
and I just noticed on this label because it says drink fresh at 46 degrees Fahrenheit. It literally gives you the perfect temperature to drink it at. That's pretty nifty. I've never seen that before. So I'm
I
going to
do
give
like
it a
that.
4.5.
Creative beer, creative
Nobody
label.
gets a 5.
Nobody gets a 5 in the
Nope.
shed.
Nope.
What are you thinking, Jurgen?
All right, I'm going with like a 4.5 as well. Looking at this
Ooh.
here, it says something about dabbling in the dark arts, and that's pretty cool on the back of the label.
Well, if we're going to...
Oh, yeah.
I mean, okay, I guess we're judging this beer by its label and by its taste, too. I guess I'm going to up it to a 4.5 also.
They say you shouldn't do that. Judge a beer by its label.
It's got some sick-ass art on it. I reckon we're gonna get a good picture of this one posted on our Facebook, but this is a beer to try, and a beer to look at. What do you think? Ashton's going to save a can for his car.
This isn't
He's
even a
gonna
beer
leave
to
it right
try.
on the
This is a
dash.
beer to take up alcoholism with.
Ashton.
I'd have to say it's a 4.5. It's a good beer. It's nice and light, I do like the dark, IPAs, but this is... I feel like I could drink this all day.
Oh,
Yeah.
for
Honestly,
sure.
you could have a bunch of them. And
This would be a good barbecue beer.
It would
it
be.
really would.
Yeah.
This is a summertime beer,
Yep.
for sure. Now,
Better days. Here we go.
What we
Yeah,
got?
that's right.
4.5s across the board?
Okay, so
4.5.
Has
So
that
I know-
happened before?
I don't think it has. And I know I said earlier that nothing gets a 5, but because we all collectively gave it a 4.5, can we just give this a 5?
Let's up it to
I
a
think
5.
that would be the first one.
Okay, we're going to give it a 5.
Nice.
Jurgen, you killed it.
I killed it.
You killed it. You killed it. Great story, great beer.
Pretty good.
Yes. Good stuff. Now, where were we with this one?
All right, so we kind of ended it off of,
Some
we
questions.
some questions, and we all came back to work, and they said, this might have happened, play it cool. That's kind of where we ended it.
And you see him the following day coming in for his regularly scheduled shift.
Yes.
What a thing. If my employer came in and told me someone might have killed someone here, just play it cool. I don't think I could play it cool. That's a little scary.
Yeah, we all did.
Now, did you
We all
know
did.
anything about this, Ashton, at
I
the
did
time?
not. I was playing it so cool.
He was really cool, this guy.
He played it so cool, he had no idea what was going on.
He went on lunch break with the dude. He's like, hey, where'd everybody go?
I know. Why is everyone avoiding me all of a
It's just
sudden?
you and me, buddy.
So how long did this go on, Jurgen?
All right, so it went on for like a week or two, and then they picked him up on an unrelated charge of robbing the Big Apple on Lisbon Street. It's not a Big Apple anymore.
Did he do it?
I think he did. But they picked him
My
up
aunt
on...
used to work at that Big Apple, and she used to tell me about all the stupid robberies.
Is that why she quit?
That's crazy. Well, they were working her like 90 hours a week. Anyway, funny side story.
Yeah, it was the one on Lisbon Street, kind of like when you're going to Lisbon. I don't even know if it's a gas station anymore.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is.
I've been in there for Jaeger.
Well, yeah, back in the day, it's the only place you could get Jaeger at midnight.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, so they picked him up on that. I do believe it was basically they had an idea that, yes, it definitely was him. As we'll see when we get into this a little bit, he was probably the most stupidest criminal ever.
I just want to ask, what kind of guy with a job robs a place for some money?
Yeah, I don't know.
A guy with a bad job.
A guy
Bad
maybe
job.
with some kind of addiction problems,
hey,
perhaps, or
I
something.
worked
that
there,
too.
buddy. She worked there too.
We all
but you
worked
don't.
there.
But you don't work there anymore.
That's true.
You've upgraded.
Well, I heard they were like killing people, and so I.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's a great opportunity to bounce.
Yeah.
But
Ashton was smart and got out quick.
Yeah.
I wasted 8 years there.
Now they took him in now at this point on an unrelated charge.
Yes.
And so is he giving up any information to the police or?
No. At that point, they start doing like extensive searches for her.
They're looking all over the Lewiston, Auburn area.
All over the
Okay.
place. So after an extensive search, the victim's body was discovered nearly fully buried in a secluded area. The body was naked with a cloth ligature tied around her left and right arms, so she was definitely, bound at that point. And where they actually found her, so if you're, not familiar with the area, in the actual parking lot where this all went down, there was a movie theater there. It was the old Lewiston flagship cinema.
Now this is
Yes.
another small mall
Yes.
type of
Yep.
Yeah, it's
strip mall type.
It's more of a strip mall.
Is it a strip mall or is it an outdoor mall?
Well, I
Are
think
they
that's the
kind of the
same
same
idea
thing?
where it's not a mall where you're going to walk into a main entrance and have all these stores.
Yeah, right. You're gonna have to
outdoor
walk. Like if
entrances.
you want to go to a different store, you're gonna have to walk outside
Right.
and
Two-
walk into another one. Okay.
And there's maybe 5 entrances. It's a very small mall, and
Yep.
and also I can almost paint a picture as to how this could happen because people are only going to go to the movies or they're only going to go to the Family Dollar, and there's a lot of that parking lot that remains empty.
Right.
That's true. Well, there used to be a bookstore there, and they closed that.
Right, but
there was a lot there. I actually used to right after high school work in that mall. There was a pet store there, and I worked there for ever. But I mean, it was pretty secluded. I'm pretty sure at that point the pet store no one was really going there. The bookstore had closed. There was a Staples. No one was going to a Staples that late into the afternoon. Things could happen in that parking lot, and nobody would know.
and so it's believed that the act occurred there.
Yes.
But he, I guess you could say, disposed of her.
Elsewhere.
And was it behind there?
Yeah, so behind where the flagship cinema was, there's a series of ATV trails.
Yes.
And that's where she eventually was found.
Okay, so this is a wooded area behind the mall.
Yeah, it's a wooded area. There's a lot of cliffy areas back there. If you didn't know where it was, you wouldn't go looking there. And where she actually was found was literally right off of where you could ride a dirt bike.
So you would say that what's believed is that he had bound her, strangled her, probably raped and robbed her,
Yes.
and then just dragged her out there. And
What was it on a heavy traffic area? This is Maine, so everyone rides dirt bikes and.
So that's the bit of the mystery, for me for this as to how he actually got her there. Richard wasn't a really big guy. I'm only 5'1". He was about the same height as me. She was a much taller lady. She was 5'9", 5'10", and was very largely pregnant at this point. And where they actually found her, it was quite a bit. You had to ride for a while. I don't know that you could actually get a car there easily. So that part I'm not 100% sure. But at that point, I don't believe he went and actually buried her yet.
You think he might have just dragged her out and hit her a little ways?
Well, there was evidence in the trunk.
Really?
Of her being in there.
Oh.
So he
Great.
could have been riding around town.
Great.
He was.
So what do you think happened?
So, I mean, at that point, and I have a little bit of background information on that with some of the evidence that was found. So at the actual scene where Donna was found at her grave, there was a shovel that was left there, a pickaxe that was left there, with the barcodes still left on the tools.
Okay. So I mean, we've all watched these kind of shows.
Yes.
You're able to identify where these items came from,
Right?
Yes.
you know, by leaving the barcodes on. It's like
Right.
leaving the information.
Yes. So pretty much what had happened at that point, he purchased the shovel and a flashlight over at the Auburn Walmart at around 7 p.m. on the same day that the victim disappeared.
And she was last seen at 4 p.m.
Around 4 p.m., yes.
So there's a 3-hour window that something could have happened. So maybe nothing happened in that mall parking lot. He could have brought her elsewhere.
It's possible.
Okay. But at this point, there's evidence that she ended up in the trunk.
Yes.
And there's a 3-hour window.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so there definitely is. So he bought the tools over at Walmart. He also went over to Lowe's right next door and bought the pickaxe.
Okay.
This guy is not a smart criminal at all.
He wasn't.
Did he pose for the camera?
Sort of. So he actually used the money that he stole from her to purchase the tools. They caught him on videotape at both places.
Just flexing on
'Cause
camera.
because he's got.
Watch
I'm
me
assuming
spend this money.
He's got 4 $100 bills.
Right.
Okay.
He also, and I know this only because my boyfriend at the time worked at Walmart. He also got himself a culotta over at the Dunkin'. Had time to do that, and was caught on camera sipping away at it at the.
Yeah, I read a report that said he was casually sipping away. I pictured this
his
guy
thirst.
leaning up against the wall with his legs crossed.
Yeah.
just-
Well, I mean, murder's hard. You got to take some time to relax.
Yeah.
yeah. yeah.
Obviously.
How do you know that, Jake?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the last
Moving
time
on.
they have him on film is at 8:20 p.m. and that's over at Lowe's. The videotape from the store showed Dwyer purchasing the pickaxe. In the store videos, Dwyer can be seen wearing a red shirt. He was also seen wearing that red shirt in a work video earlier that day. On the same day, there were cameras all over ACS.
So a lot of people have seen him wearing this red shirt.
Yes.
There's no mistaking that this is Dwyer on film. Is what you're
Right.
what
no,
you're getting
I mean,
at.
He's pretty.
He's on
distinct
many
looking.
cameras over the course of several hours of that day with the same clothing
with the
on.
same clothes
Okay.
on.
Spending her money.
Yep.
Same red shirt. Oh,
Yep,
man.
and when they executed the search warrant of Dwyer's brother's house out in Canton, they seized a similar-looking red shirt from his bedroom, and a forensic chemist with the state crime lab analyzed fibers from the shirt, and they were similar from fibers taken from the ligatures on Donna's left and right wrists.
Oh, so he tied her up with his own shirt?
No, I believe it was part of her clothes.
Now, before we get
okay.
too far into that,
Yeah.
when was she found?
So it was several weeks later. We were getting close into November. People were really worried at this point because snow was coming.
We get
Yeah,
a woman
right.
that's 8 months pregnant.
Right.
She hasn't been seen. At this
Right.
point, she probably would have had this baby. She hasn't
Yes.
checked into any of the local hospitals in this
Right.
area, which have been checked, I'm sure, a
Oh, yeah.
number of times. Nobody knows what's going on.
Yes.
And then what happens the day they find her?
They find her. She is partially buried, well, almost completely. And at that point, I mean, everybody at work knew about it. And then they kind of, went on with the case against him.
Now, he had used the pickaxe,
Mm-hmm.
and he purchased at Lowe's. He had also purchased a shovel and a flashlight,
And a
I believe,
flashlight.
at Lowe's as well. I
Yep.
mean, at Walmart. And from what I understand, he had dug a very shallow grave, so much that even some of her remains were sticking up out of the dirt.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So
He
when
just didn't care, huh?
No,
No.
when they actually were doing his appeals, obviously, he was convicted. He was trying to suppress evidence, or rather, argue that it was kind of prejudicial evidence because the jury was seeing pictures of her feet coming out of the ground, and he thought that might, sway things against him in an unfair way.
I would be curious as to what his logic would be behind that,
Right,
because it's just a
know,
crime scene photo.
It is a crime scene photo.
Are you upset because the crime scene photo looks bad? Well, maybe you should have buried her the whole way, or have just not done it. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I'm confused
Right,
about
then.
what he meant about that.
Yeah, that's weird.
Well-
I don't think he has any standing to be making any calls like that anyway, to be honest with you.
Right.
So this guy's in custody. They've now, at this point, shortly thereafter, have found the victim's remains
Yes.
with the tools left right at the at
Yeah,
the site.
with the barcodes
I mean,
on
talk
them.
about leaving evidence behind.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
It was pretty ridiculous. The flashlight in question, he left over at his girlfriend's house. So after he did this, he went over and stayed the night at his girlfriend's
and left
house.
a marker there.
The what?
Well, in a sense, he left a marker there. You know,
Yes,
he
yeah.
went and purchased these 3 items to dispose of this body.
Okay.
He did it obviously at night, which is why he's got the flashlight.
Right.
He's so stupid that he leaves 2 of the 3 items that he purchased over there, and then takes another one to a location where he regularly frequents. Yeah, this is my boyfriend's flashlight. I mean, talk about come and find me. Come and
Idiot.
I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
if there ever was a person to paint a case against himself and do something, you know what I mean? This is the guy.
No one
Right.
said we were bright in this area.
Well,
I'm
this
still
guy certainly
confused
isn't.
about why it is he chose a pregnant woman. Like, I'm just very confused about his thinking behind,
I think he's just a creep, like, honestly.
like you really have to be a creep. This is a woman with someone else's baby.
Do you think it was just because like you had said earlier, he wasn't very good to women.
No.
So do you think he was just picking a young victim because
An easy one?
what
It
he-
just sounds like
Is it
it sounds
easier
like
that
time
way?
and opportunity,
Does it-
and it
Like
could have been
time-
anyone.
yeah.
It almost
Right.
sounds like it was the pregnant girl. you
Yeah,
know,
it was like time, opportunity, like easy victims, I guess you could say, people who would trust him.
who wouldn't be looking for a pregnant girl? Everybody
Right.
Well,
in the world
yeah.
would be looking for this girl.
Yeah,
you
right.
know, he just picked the most.
And
I
she
don't
was in
know.
a vulnerable. Bleh.
Yeah, very.
Of course.
She was in a vulnerable spot at
Right.
the time, and he was trying to help her get a car. So I
Yeah,
mean,
and my question
easy
now
victim,
is,
I guess.
now that you have the perpetrator and you have the victim in hand, how did they tie him together to this? How did they tie him to this? I mean, what brought the police to the flashlight?
I mean, it was really just like all the evidence that was out there. I mean, everybody was talking about it at work. They were leaving at the same time. He didn't try to hide what was going on. So you had both of the victim and the perpetrator at this point leaving at the exact same time. He ended up not coming back to work, which he was supposed to. And that was the last time, she was seen. So, like, it was a very obvious last person to see her alive situation. It was very,
Just one of these things that
yeah.
there was so many other people that saw little bits, coupled with the fact that there were purchases made.
Right.
That
And you
were-
could give cops this. They really do. Like they will timeline the murders. Who saw who at
Right.
the right time.
And so, I mean, there's bits of forensic evidence in here that
Right.
they're able to pull together. And now, once they get all of this together, and they confront him with it, what happens?
Right. So I mean, like, at this point, there was DNA evidence of his and Donna's on all of the tools. There was semen evidence they found that went right back to him. He left a soda bottle at the scene.
Wow, sloppy.
Yeah, there was like,
Wow.
the DNA they said was like the match was like 1 in 4.71 million.
So there's no denying.
There's no
Yeah.
denying. He tried to deny it in his appeal,
of course.
stating that there could be somebody. I guess there was some
Is that
sort
prejudicial evidence
Well,
too?
no. Well, I'm sure his defense is,
Right.
we worked together. We were friends.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, hey, you got
Yeah,
my
let's
DNA
let's
now
just
on
swap
you,
semen
I
samples.
mean,
That's
it's-
not how that works.
Well,
no.
No,
I'm sure they painted their
No.
own picture, though, on that, too.
Well,
Right.
right, but I'm just saying, like, his arguments are not very well thought out.
Right. Well, that's why he's still in jail.
Right.
And so now they've pieced it together. They've confronted him. Was he denying things in the beginning, or did he admit to a lot of this?
He's never admitted to any of this.
Never admitted to any of
No.
this. Okay.
No, he's still, very much claiming innocent and trying to appeal it.
No doubt, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty open and shut within, like, I believe the year. They, had the conviction. Let me see here. It went to trial about a year later in September 2008.
So they had a year to really build a case against him.
Yeah, the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours, and he was found guilty.
They didn't need much time.
No, they did not. I mean, it was I mean, even without the DNA stuff, it's pretty obvious.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot
happens
more
here.
than just circumstantial evidence here.
Right.
Right.
I mean, this guy left his DNA everywhere. He made monetary purchases.
Mm-hmm.
He's seen on camera making these purchases.
He's known as being a shitbag
Right.
to a
Right.
lot of people.
Right.
And even that, I mean, I know that's circumstantial, but you can almost say, yeah, this guy, we could see him doing it, and that's enough to look into things.
Well, see, he's known as being creepy. But he's also been like overly nice, I guess.
Right.
Now, how did this affect things at ACS? Once this all came out, and it's known, this guy that was looked at as a team lead had murdered a beautiful woman that worked with us as well. Because everybody that I've talked to about this story, they say she was a very beautiful woman. You know, not that matters, but just somebody that stood out to others is, I guess, what I'm getting at. And this guy just took her away. I mean, how did that affect everybody at work?
I think that a lot of people at this time with this particular situation, a lot of people were scared. I was scared because it was random. I had never, had something like this occur in my life.
Sure.
You don't think that you're going to have a murder at your work type of situation. They didn't offer any counseling at work. We just had to kind of proceed as it was. They did have the police come in and talk to like the women, if you wanted to, about how to defend yourself.
Sure.
But I mean, it was very, quick little half-hour type of thing, telling us to carry pepper spray and spray people. But yeah, they didn't really, at this point, do much for anybody like dealing with this.
No kidding. So this did leave a lot of people troubled. Now, at this point, Ashton, did you recall this?
I can't say I do.
Maybe you were you still working for them at the time?
I believe so, yeah.
And you don't recall any of this? He was that chill, this guy.
Yeah, right.
He was that chill.
Man, I hung out with this guy every day,
The Iceman right here.
No, I think it's because, like she said, cops were escorting people out, and that's the truth. Like, people were being escorted in and out every single day.
You
So,
just kind of another day in
You
paradise.
get used to it.
yeah, you really do. And there were a couple times I've seen people get escorted out. I've seen cops come in and out, and you just kind of go about your business.
And to be honest, like, you couldn't be picky about who you were hiring. At this point, like, this place had cycled through most of the community.
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
remember
It was
their
very
turnover
hard to
rate
hire
was
people.
crazy.
Yeah.
They had a sign that never went down that
It's
said
true.
hiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always.
At this time, I worked as the mall security / maintenance guy. I don't know if you guys know that.
How'd you let this
Oh,
get
no
past
way.
you? Adam?
Yes, I was holding that off on you guys. You remember, I won't say his name, but there was an older guy who always smoked cigarettes. He was there like all the time. I worked underneath him.
Well, that's cool.
But I was the guy out back using the claw, picking up trash.
How do you let this murder get past you?
I didn't even know any of this at the time, but I was the guy that walked around out back picking up trash. And I remember people would be outside smoking cigarettes
But I probably
all
saw you all the
day long.
time.
And I probably drove past. I was cutting the grass back
Yeah.
there. So it's funny because the three of us were there at the time that
Wow.
this happened.
Yeah.
My little office area was just on the other end of the mall.
Wow.
I didn't do much but
crazy.
just kick it all day, really, because nothing
No
happened
joke.
there. I mean,
Everybody
you know,
worked at ACS.
Yep.
I was just talking to Jurgen about this, and like literally, I could still name like 20 people I still know today that
Yeah.
worked there.
Yeah.
Now, to go back to Dwyer, what happened to him in court?
So, I mean, with that, I mean, it was, again, pretty cut and dry. He was sentenced to life in prison. That was just for the murder. He also is serving concurrent terms of 30 years on gross sexual assault for the rape, as well as the robbery count for the Big Apple robbery that he was originally taken
Wow.
in on.
Wow.
So he's never getting out.
Yeah, absolutely not. I have a follow-up question. The victim's husband, did he ever make it? Did he ever get his paperwork straightened out? Was he able to stay in the country?
He never made it to the country. So when this all went down, he was still in Syria.
Oh, wow.
So at first when she went missing, there was questions if, he was involved or her ex-husband was involved. So that's where it started until they started digging deeper at work.
Yeah.
But he never made it here. So we don't really know what happened with him. Hopefully he's still alive over there right now.
Yeah, they've been going through a lot.
Yeah.
How did this affect your life?
There was just like an overwhelming feeling of just not being safe for a while until it was over and done with.
How old were you?
I was, 24 at the time.
So you were young. This is something
Yeah.
that probably, obviously, still left a huge impression on you.
Yeah, I was 24 at the time. I do remember the night that they had it was like televised, and we were all waiting because they had a TV in the break room for the actual verdict. Like everybody was cheering when it was read. So it was it impacted a lot of people.
How long was he in court? I believe it was a very short trial, from what I understand, and they found him guilty real quick.
And it took them 2 hours of deliberation.
Yeah, it was 2 hours of deliberation. I don't think the trial went more than a week or two. It was really fast
Open
once it
shut.
got going.
And the sad thing is that if ACS would have done the responsible thing as an employer, done the right checks, as you know what I mean, and such, this is definitely something that would have been avoided, because this guy would never have worked there.
Yep.
Right. This is going to be a theme in the next story we talk about too.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there was like a lot of blowback. There was a lawsuit after that. Oddly enough, her oldest daughter ended up working for ACS while this was going on.
Really?
Yeah, she ended up having to leave because she sued, like she took a civil suit about them not doing the background checks. I do believe that was like settled out of court, like later. There was a settlement, but yeah. Yep.
Wow, that's interesting.
Wow, okay.
Ashton, you're sitting here looking like you might have a question.
Well, I was just wondering when that damn sign for not hiring anymore went down.
When they closed.
It never did, right.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that sign for years and years.
That's
Yep.
crazy. You know, and this is and you said she had 3 children before.
Yes.
How old were the kids? Do you know?
I don't know how old the son was. I know she had a daughter that was a little bit younger. Her eldest daughter was at least 18.
Old enough to work at
Because she was old
ACS.
enough to work there, yeah.
Did she win the lawsuit?
Wow.
I believe it was settled, like in her favor, yes.
Yeah, so she would have to quit anyway. And even if you didn't win, it would still be kind of uncomfortable to go to work.
I mean, it was really awkward anyway. Like,
right.
I didn't know how to. She wasn't on my campaign, but it was very awkward around her. Like, how do you deal with that? It's weird.
This is
how does she get up and do that, knowing her mom was murdered by someone who worked there?
This is definitely a tragic story because there's a lot of victims involved. There's a lot of people that worked at ACS that cared about her. She had family that cared about her. She had children now that have grown up since then without a mother, without the the love of a full intact family. So this is something that was felt then and is still felt by a lot of people in this community today. And the fact that this guy is in jail for the rest of his life, I would assume could bring a lot of
closure
for some people, but in some ways probably not, because this is something that should have been avoided.
Right.
Now ACS, wasn't a blow that had crippled them to the point of having to shut down, I assume.
No.
They were able to recover from this.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't like there was some blowback. They had the lawsuit, but people still worked there. We actually, after that, got more business. We actually took on, at least in my campaign, a credit card from a Maine retailer. I won't really go into who.
Sure.
But we ended up going from like a team of like 30 people to we like ramped up to like 120 people.
Wow.
So like literally right after this happens, like people were still trying to work there and business was coming there. So it was very
crazy.
strange.
So unfortunately, some companies might have, ACS, we could use them. Oh yeah, this might have brought some kind of publicity to the company and such. And
maybe
a negative thing happening could have led to some of their growth, which is unfortunate.
Well, I mean, it's possible. It could just be because of the
service
product they provided
and
too,
need.
you know?
All publicity is good publicity, right?
To some extent,
To some extent, yeah.
I know I definitely wouldn't want my name dragged through the mud saying I murdered someone and half buried them behind a dead mall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Come work at
Still
ACS.
Yeah, no thanks.
No, Jake, did you have anything to add to this?
No, this story to me is way more interesting than a lot of the stories that we've done, just because it's local. It happened, like, I grew up maybe a mile and a half from the Lewiston Mall, and I still live relatively close. So I drive by it a couple times a week.
In a sense, all four of us live close.
Right.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just like, I cannot believe that these things happen right around the corner from me. We're very lucky up in Maine where we don't have a lot, or it seems like we don't have a lot of crime to speak of. When we hear about big serial killers or murders or whatever,
really
big
touches
events,
the community.
yeah, It doesn't feel the same. Like, you hear about it happening in other places, but you don't really hear about it so much here.
Yeah.
And just to know, like I said, that it's right around the corner for me kind of puts a different
it's a
light
good
on it.
and bad thing because, we almost feel like we're safer than other places, but things
can
can happen
These
anywhere.
kind of things can happen at any time.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else you'd like to add to this?
Pretty good story,
You're still keeping it chill.
Yeah,
Yeah. You got one level.
This guy is mono right there.
Right.
Well, I've this is one that I did a little reading on. I read some of the I watched some videos and such, and I gotta agree. I feel the same way. Where it's like this is kind of a crazy thing that happened. It's you drive past that. So many people were in that area at the time that this happened, and nobody was there to help her. It's an unfortunate thing.
Right.
I drive past ACS every day, and no lie, I still look to see if that sign is up. It was up for so long that it's like imprinted in my brain.
Yeah.
What is that part of the building now? Like, I know they have C40, then they have the trampoline place, and then
They've
used to have
turned
a
it
gym.
into a different place.
Okay.
So the trampoline place was next door at one point because there was some other offices over there. But then they expanded into where ACS is like right now. So it's one big thing now. They took over both areas.
Okay.
It's some kind of work building though. It really is. I can't remember the name, but I've stopped at Family
It was
Dollar.
a medical billing place.
On
It's
the
changed
end,
hands in
Yep, there
in a
was,
place. The next part, I guess, really next episode, we're going to be coming back to ACS because unfortunately, there's another.
Yeah, it doesn't end there.
It doesn't end
No.
there. We're
You
gonna.
think it would, but it doesn't.
There's more
no,
to it.
Doesn't. There's
So
a whole other story.
For now, I guess we'll give you our social media, and you'll have to wait for that part to come out in a couple of days.
Yeah, that's okay. You want to bring it up? Because I
Sure.
don't have it on this computer.
You can find us on Facebook at Stories from the Shed, Instagram at Stories from the Shed Podcast, YouTube Stories from the Shed Podcast,
And then Russian Twitter.
Stories from Shed.
Thank you.
You can find us on iMessage, but I wouldn't fucking bother.
It's still disconnected. Nothing's changed.
And definitely hit us up at our Gmail at sftspodcast@gmail.com. Love the emails. Thank you for listening, guys. Tell a friend. And thank you, Jurgen, for coming on.
Thank
and
you.
looking forward to doing the next ACS part. And hopefully you'll be there be here for that too, Ashton.
I think I will.
All right,
Awesome.
great. Thank you for listening, guys.